Well, one of my favorite things to do is I enjoy sitting around a campfire. Anybody else? Like, I don't even need anybody there. Like, there have been nights that I have just found myself, I'm going to go burn a fire. I don't know what it is, but I know as men, we're attracted to fire for some reason. Anybody? Right? And so I enjoy going to the fire. I enjoy the crackling of the firewood, the smell of the smoke. And I don't know about you, but the thing that makes my fire a little bit better is Chris Stapleton playing in the background, right? That's when you know that is good. I mean, when I'm sitting beside a fire and the music's, low and you hear the crackling and you smell that smoke, it just seems like everything just kind of slows down in the moment. And when you have friends gathered around the fire, it makes it even better. I remember a couple of years ago, it was the 4th of July, and we went to some friend's house, and we had a fire. We started a fire about 5 o'clock. We weren't going to shoot fireworks until about 9, 10 o'clock if we really wanted to get on the neighbors' nerves. And so we started this fire, and the conversation started just about random things, about what was going on in the world, politics, why South Carolina Gamecocks were the dominant of all other teams. Well, that was what I was thinking anyway. And we sat by that fire for hours, and then I realized, like, a few hours in, the conversation shifted. Like, we weren't talking about sports and politics and world events anymore. We were talking about, man, how tough is it being a parent? It got real vulnerable real quick. And I'm not sure how we got there, but I have a feeling that the fire had something to do with it. It just made us feel really comfortable. And I think some powerful conversations that I have had with others and with God has happened around campfires, of just that experience. Because it's something about the fire that makes it safe to open up, that says, hey, you're not alone in this situation. And that's the moment that I want us to step into today, is this campfire moment. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be in this series called Campfire Stories, because some of the most powerful moments in all of Scripture, they didn't happen in palaces or in pulpits. Some of those powerful moments in the Scriptures, we find that they happened places like caves, in deserts, and, of course, around campfires. And these moments that we're going to look at, they're really raw. I think they're honest moments where God meets His people at their lowest point. So today, we're going to pull up a seat next to the fire, and we're going to look at a guy named Elijah. Now, we're not going to look at Elijah for his victory, because Elijah was incredible, right? He did some incredible things, but we're not going to look at him just for his victory today. I want us to see his collapse, because maybe in your life, maybe the fire in your life has started to fade. Maybe there was a point where you felt like you were on fire, and everything was going great, but then you feel like it's starting to fade a little bit. I believe the hope is for us, and we talked about it a little bit last week, but God meets us in our weaknesses. Do you believe that? Yes. Have you seen that? Have you witnessed that? Now, I want you to talk back a little bit. I've had 3 cups of espresso and the Holy Spirit, so it's going to go today. And so I need you to come on. But listen, God meets us in our weakness, and here's what I love about that. When God meets me in my weakness, He doesn't meet me with shame. Well, you can do better than this. What are you doing? God never meets me in my weakness with shame. What I have found is God always meets me with a whisper of grace and peace and purpose every time that he finds me. So I want us to look for a moment, and I want us to talk about Elijah. How Elijah has just experienced probably one of the most epic God moments that you could possibly experience in all of Scripture in 1 Kings chapter 18. Elijah's up on Mount Carmel. He is fighting against the prophets and the priests of Baal. And he's challenging them that my God is better than your dead, non-existent God. That's pretty brave conversation, because not Isaiah, he's a good guy too, but Elijah, he is outnumbered 850 to 1. Now, I'm not a genius, but you don't talk smack to 850 people when you got no backup, right? But he is talking smack to the point of Maybe the reason that your God's not answering because he's taking a bathroom break. I mean, he is just taunting these prophets. And they're like, just watch. And then they're trying to call fire down, praying to their God, and just send fire and burn this altar up. And nothing happens. And they start tearing their clothes. It's a bad day when you start ripping clothes off and screaming and rubbing ash all over your body and tormenting and cutting yourself because your God's not answering. And then it's Elijah's turn to step up to the plate. Now, when you've talked a lot of smack, you better be able to back it up. You know what I'm talking about? Like when I was a kid on the playground, when I was on the sideline in basketball, I talked a lot of smack. Here was the problem. When I got in the game, I couldn't back any of that up. None of it. But my advice was always, if you'll win the smack talk, you win the whole thing. Get in their heads. Make them think you're better than you are. If you're a golfer, you don't have to be a great golfer. Just dress and look the part, and people automatically have fear that you're a great golfer. Right? And so, I'm just telling you from experience. And so here it goes, that Elijah says, I'm going to do you one better. Your God taking his bathroom break, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take water, and they were in a drought, so this was really an act of faith that he says, I'm going to take this water, and I'm going to pour it on the altar. So I'm going to drench this whole thing, and it's still going to burn up. So he soaks it in water, he prays, and boom, just as he said, fire shoots out of heaven. It burns up the altar. Nothing left, disintegrated. This is a total victory. And to celebrate, this is the part that we don't, you know how we draw, I've been to churches where they draw like the Bible stories on the nursery walls for kids, like you got Noah, but they don't show what actually happens once the rain starts and things are floating, you know what I mean? And so what happens here with Elijah, we don't draw this one on the wall either because fire came down from heaven. And then to celebrate, he just kills all the prophets. He just goes crazy. He takes them down into the Jezreel Valley and massacres them. And he is at an all-time high. Wouldn't you agree with me that this is a high? That you just stood up to idolatry in Israel, and your God just showed out because you know good and well, if you were standing in the parking lot of Walmart and said, watch my God send fire down from heaven and burn this buggy cart up. It's a buggy if you're in the South. And you burn it up, you would be like, look what my God did. You'd be talking about it, wouldn't you? So Elijah's excited because he's got a good resume now. Like he's been traveling speaker, and now he's burning things up. And it didn't take long because when you turn one chapter over, we go from spiritual high, fire burning. I told those 850 guys, I talked the smack. One chapter over, his smack stops because it all comes crashing down on Elijah. Look what he says in 1 Kings chapter 19. Then he was, what's that word? He was what? Wait a second. Didn't he just call fire down from heaven? Didn't he just talk junk to 850 false prophets? But look what he says. He was afraid, and he arose, and he ran. He ran for his life, and he asked that he might die. I don't know if you've ever been in those situations. But Elijah here is saying, I was afraid. I didn't know what to do, so I got up and I ran. See, some of our problem is we get up and run way too soon. We give up way too soon because we're afraid, because we forget who is in our corner. We forget that we have a God who stands in our place, a God who protects, a God who loves us, a God who leads us, a God who gives us peace and who gives us purpose. And there's no reason for us to retreat and run from our life. We got to stop running from things and start running to Him. And he said, hey, it's enough now, God. Just take my life. I'm over it. One chapter is all it took. Elijah goes from fire to fear real quick. From fire to fear. This is the same guy, the same prophet, the same one, that now he's living in this place of fear. He's running scared. You know why he's running? You know why he's broken, why he's exhausted, why he's begging God to end his life? It wasn't because there was an army after him. It's because one person made one comment, one threat, and that ended it for him. Because Jezebel said, by this time tomorrow, You can put your money on it. You're a dead man. Now, he wasn't afraid of the 850 false prophets. He stood in boldness and called fire down from heaven. But this woman, Jezebel, telling him that, hey, because you killed my prophets, you will die. That sent him into a tailspin. Somebody testify for a second, because sometimes you can have the greatest day in the world and somebody send you a text. Somebody make a comment on your social media page. Or you read something on the Berkeley County Growth and Development page about you. It ruins your whole day, doesn't it? Hopefully you've never been on the Berkeley County Growth and Development page. Never mind. He goes, listen, for Elijah, it took just one threat, and it flipped this whole world upside down, doesn't it? Just one threat. He's on fire, and now he's living in this place of fear. And he goes from calling fire down from heaven, listen, now he's laying underneath a tree in the desert. And this is what I thought was interesting. That the Bible tells us that he finds himself under a broom tree. This is not a tall, leafy oak. It's not one that, we have here that we would get under for shelter. It's this desert shrub of a bush. It provides very little shade, but in a place where there was nothing, this becomes his hiding place. He finds himself hiding in something that doesn't even provide the protection that he needs from the environment. This was for Elijah a last resort. And that's where he ends up. He ends up drained, he ends up alone, and he ends up whispering to God, just take me out. Just take me out. I don't want to do it anymore. And not take me out of ministry, not take me out of the church, take me out of this world. Now, how deep did his depression have to hit for him to turn from being spiritual high to God, just take my life? He rock bottom really quick. And maybe that's not an unfamiliar thing. Maybe you have been there. Maybe you're there. Maybe you gave something your all. You've prayed about it. You fasted about it. You gave a lot of energy to it. You felt like you were obedient. And then one thing went sideways and it threw you off. Maybe you got blindsided. Maybe you got worn out. Maybe you've been disappointed. And suddenly you're sitting under your own broom tree in a place that's providing nothing, just whispering to God, I don't know how much more I can take of this. Anybody? I don't know how much more I can take of this. This is what burnout looks like in Scripture. And what Elijah doesn't realize, this is holy ground. He is on holy ground. And he doesn't even realize what God's about to do. Because the truth is, I believe the church doesn't always tell the truth and doesn't always talk about things that we should be talking about. For instance, did you know you can be spiritually strong and still emotionally empty? Do you know that? You can love Jesus and still hit a wall. Even prophets get panic attacks. And I believe that you can love Jesus and have a therapist at the same time. 52% of Christians report being extremely stressed on a regular basis. So let's just do the math in the room. 50%, 52% of the people in this room probably would say you feel overly stressed on a regular basis, right? 70% report that they feel like they can't keep up. Like there's never enough. 1 in 3 adults under 40 say they have nobody to talk to lean on, to get advice from. Nobody. And can I just say, if you're over 40, what are you doing to pour back in to the younger generation? And that's weird making that statement, because I used to be the younger generation a few years ago, and now I'm over the 40 mark, right? And I know, you look 22. I get it, I know. Good genes, good docs, right? But I think sometimes faith for me feels like I'm just barely hanging on. Like I'm really having to trust God to the next place, to the next thing. I really need you to come through here. And for Elijah, I don't think Elijah lacked faith. I think you would agree with me. Elijah didn't lack faith. I mean, when's the last time that you've gone out and talked smack to the false idols and the false prophets and called fire down from heaven. When's the last time you've done that, right? Because I haven't. I've never done that. And so I don't think it's because Elijah lacked faith. I don't think that he lacked the fuel. I don't think he lacked anything. I don't think he was even being disobedient. I think for Elijah, he was just absolutely depleted. And I think that matters because sometimes what we need most is not a rebuke. Sometimes our souls need rest because we make really dumb decisions when our souls are not at rest, don't we? We say things, we act certain ways, we do things that are out of character when we're just burning it at both ends. Burning it at both ends. We don't need lectures. We just need a moment of letting go and resting. And so the good news is that Elijah's crash wasn't the end of his story. His crash was just the doorway into a deeper encounter with God. And I don't know if you've ever looked at your situation like that. Maybe what you're going through, maybe the stress where you had it all, you fire moments, and now it's just like, I just don't know that I'm still there. Maybe this is a moment that God's trying to do something more with you, to speak clearer to you, to reposition you. Because if your soul's been running on empty, then I want you to hear what happens to Elijah. Because I believe that God's not afraid of us being exhausted because God's already packed his grace for the journey that we're going to need in the next point. Isn't that good news? That God's already got it planned out of what's next. So if your soul's running on empty, God's got grace for you. God's got rest for you. God's got peace for you. Our world is all about self-care. This is how I was in Barnes & Noble yesterday. I love a hardback book. I don't know how you Kindle people do it, but I like physical books, right? And I love the smell of the book, and I love going in Barnes & Noble. But the self-help section was a ton of stuff. And then I went into the Christian book section, and it seemed like there was a lot more self-help in the Christian book section than there was soul care help. Because, see, I believe there should be some self-care, but, see, God's given us something more here. God's all about soul care. Because if your soul's good, because that's the heart of everything, that's the seat of all of your emotions, right? If that's healthy and that's good and we've cared for that, then we're good. So let's go to this point of God. When we find ourselves in those situations, God responds to us with care and not condemnation. Now, we can say that right now and we can believe that, but when we hit these moments, there's times that we feel like we're condemned. You ever been there? You feel absolutely condemned? You mess up, you sin, and you're embarrassed, you're shameful, right? And you feel like God's just, some of us view God, and this is the way I used to view God. It was like, you know Whack-A-Mole? You know that game Whack-A-Mole? I love that game. But that's the way I used to view God. The moment I peek my head out, bam, just go back in your place, sir. You don't belong out here with the rest of the moles. And that's the way that I would view God. Was that God's upset with me, God's mad with me, God doesn't want to have anything to do with me, then God can't use me, and then God goes from can't use me to God doesn't even want me, and so why am I even here? It's a never-ending pattern, isn't it? But God's response to us in these moments is care, not condemnation. We're not condemned. We can approach the throne of God without condemnation. We can approach it with, the Bible says, confidence. Confidence. So Elijah here, he's down, he's done. He's not just physically tired. Elijah is emotionally unraveling, right? This is a red flag. This is a big alert. We got to get this guy help. And you look at his life and you think for a moment, like Elijah was expecting God to come in hot and rescue him. Some of us have been in those, like, God, I need you to come through right now, right? I need you to come through right now, and I need you to come in hot, and I need you to fix this. You remember that fire from heaven thing? I need you to do that for me right now. But that's not what God always does, is it? Because this is where everything, I think, shifts for Elijah, because instead of a lecture, Elijah gets something I think is better. You know what he gets? He gets lunch, right? Look what he says, verse 5. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. What a word from the Lord. Elijah, I know you're tired, man. I get it. I see you. And I know you're probably expecting a lecture. You probably want me to, walk you through the 10 Commandments again, or you want me to teach you the Shema. But here's what I'm saying. Just get up and eat. There was no rebuke. There was no guilt trip. There was no spiritual shaming. There was just bread, water, and rest. One of your biggest takeaways today could be this: go home, eat, and go to sleep. And 95% of the church is like, great application, I'm going to do it this week, right? And this doesn't happen one time. This happens twice. Elijah eats, he lies down again, and then the angel comes a second time. And look what it says. Elijah goes, the journey, or the angel tells him, the journey is too great for you. In other words, I see you. I know that you're running on fumes, but I'm going to tell you, Elijah, take your time. I'm not rushing you. I'm not angry with you. I am here. Let's care for your soul. Let's care for your soul. Because you and I would expect judgment, but God offers kindness. And I love the scriptures when it says that it's God's kindness that has led us to redemption. It's His kindness and His goodness. We would expect pressure, but God provides, He provides for us peace. Because some of us grew up in church cultures that only handed out guilt. Guilt and grit. Push harder, try harder. When you had an issue, you would go to the church, you go to the deacons and elders or pastors or whatever was on staff, and you would say, hey, I've got this issue. And I can remember hearing some of them tell me, you need to pray more, serve more, and try harder. That didn't work, right? If you were tired, they would tell you that you're just not trusting God enough. You're not trusting God. If you feel tired, you're not trusting God enough. If you struggle with identity, not identity, well, back that up. Different sermon, different day. If you struggle with anxiety, people questioned your faith. Because you can't have anxiety and be a follower of Jesus. You ever heard that? Well, I got some questions on a couple of people that I read about in the Bible. I think Peter was a little anxious, don't you? I think Elijah was a little anxious. I'm pretty sure that Eve was really anxious after everything happened. And I'm pretty sure Adam was too when he realized it was his fault the whole time. If you struggle with anxiety, it's not your faith. It's just your soul needs rest. That's it. And see, in the church, growing up, rest wasn't holy. It just meant you were lazy. Because you had to do Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. You know what I mean? You had a Sunday sermon, you had a Sunday night message, and you had a whole different Wednesday night prayer meeting. We know what the prayer meeting was. That's when you found out all the local gossip in the prayer. Well, I just want us to pray for Steve. Steve had, he's just not going through a good time right now. And then there was extended conversations in the parking lot. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about? Okay. But rest wasn't considered to be holy. Rest was considered to be lazy. And then burnout, that was the price of being faithful. And we applaud people in the church for all the hard work they do. And we burn them out. And we say, that's just being faithful. And that's being stupid. That's being poor stewards of people, right? That we just burn people out. Anybody ever been on, not from the church, just in general, you just feel like you've been burned out. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was a friendship. You're like, oh gosh, you know what I'm talking about. That person calls, you just let it go to voicemail. And your voicemail is always full when they try to leave one. But here's God's first move towards Elijah isn't to call him out and tell him all these things of anxiety's wrong and you're struggling and you need to try harder. God's first move to Elijah was to care for him, to sympathize with him, to understand. And maybe that's the word somebody needs today, is that God is not disappointed in your exhaustion, and he's not mad at you for needing rest. He remembers that you're human, not a machine. We weren't meant to constantly be on the go. Some of you just need to sit beside a fire and take a breath and relax and learn to say this powerful word, no. That's the English version. Here's the Spanish version, no. You just need to be able to say no to some things. Well, but if I say no, they're going to be disappointed. Are they going to be there when your soul is drained? Rest. Psalm 103:14 says this, for he knows our frame, and he remembers that we are, what's that word? Dust just, it can be gone, can it? Doesn't take much to get rid of dust. That God knows our frame. He knows everything about us. We have been fearfully and wonderfully made, right? And God knows everything about us. And he says this, that he remembers, he hadn't forgotten that we're just dust. We're here today, gone tomorrow. Because when we think about certain events in our lives, it's like, that wasn't that long ago. But it really was that long ago, right? Like it felt just like yesterday that we were popping CDs into our cool little CD players that had the dolphin that would jump. Did anybody have that? And then when we wanted to listen to something, we would just pull one of the CDs out of our visor. But do you know how long ago that was that we were popping CDs out of the visor? But some of you are still rocking that. I feel it, right? Some of you are still carrying flip phones. That's fine. Jitterbugs are cool. They're great. I'm getting there. But he says that God knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. I think sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is just take a nap and eat a meal. I think it's the most spiritual thing we can do. Because Elijah didn't need motivational speeches. He just needed his soul to be repaired. Because he had come off of a fire moment, an incredible moment. One threat sent him over the edge. And now his soul was all out of whack. Everything that he had been packing down comes out. Because whatever you shove down in a well will eventually come up in the bucket. Everybody needs counseling. Everybody needs counseling. And so, that same God who sent fire from heaven is now sending food to a broken prophet in the desert. And because he cares more about your restoration than your resume, he's not concerned about all the things that you're doing. He's more concerned about your soul being restored and having a healthy relationship with him. So God's love doesn't just shrink back when we're weak. That's when it comes evident. And he pushes in on us. We lean into his love. It's that moment under that broom tree. It's not the end of Elijah's story. It's the start of exposure of God. I need more. I can't even get to a decent tree to provide and to give me the protection and the covering that I need. So before God gives Elijah this new mission, he gives him some space to breathe. Some of us just need space to breathe. So before God speaks mission, he gives and creates a moment, because sometimes the whisper, you have to have a whisper at the mountain. The whisper at the mountain. After the meals, after the naps, after the touch by an angel, good show, Elijah takes a 40-day journey to Mount Sinai. Y'all remember Mount Sinai? That's where Moses encountered God. That's where the Ten Commandments came from. And this is the same mountain where all that stuff happened, the same place that Moses meets God. Commandments are given, and God's glory was seen. This is holy ground that Elijah is standing on. He is not in unfamiliar territory. And Elijah, he's still not okay. So what does he do? He goes and finds a cave. And he does what so many of us do when we're discouraged and tired. He isolated himself. And isolation is the worst place for us to be. Isn't it? It is the worst place for us to be. That instead of pushing in, we pull back and we find ourselves, again, I'm going to say the same thing, quote me again on this one, we make dumb decisions when we isolate ourselves. We don't make good decisions when we isolate. You need people. This is why we tell you, D group or life group. This is great, glad to see you, but you need to get into a group of people that care for you, love you, and will push you along on the journey to help disciple you. And so Elijah's in this cave, and he's isolated, and he pulls back, and then he vents, and he says this in verse 10, and paraphrase it. He says, I've been very zealous for God. You had these conversations? God, I think I've done a lot of stuff for you. Like, I went to church 4 Sundays in a row. I gave. I held a door open for somebody. And when I wanted to say a word that I wasn't supposed to say, I held back. I've done a lot for you. I've been very zealous for you. But God, here's the thing. I'm the only one left. This is Elijah. This is the Berkeley County version of this passage. I am the only one left. And they're trying to kill me too. Because he's isolated himself. He's in a false reality because Elijah now thinks that he is the only one who's left preaching and pointing towards God. And I think we've all been there. We've all told God our resumes. We told God everything of what we've done. But we've not told God that we're tired and we're alone and that we can't see what He's doing and that we don't know if we've got anything left. And God responds, and here's what God says, not with a fix and not with a formula. He comes out, and God says this, Elijah, come out of the cave. I want to show you something. I want to show you something. And then the Bible tells us in verse 11 through 12, he says this, and behold, the Lord passed by. It was in a moment of isolation that God didn't let him stay isolated. He pulled him out to bring the relationship. You come out of the cave. And the Lord passed by, and guess what? There was a great and strong wind that tore through the mountains. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake. Anybody ever been through an earthquake? Like a real one, not one of those South Carolina trembles that happen in Somerville. Like a real one. And after the wind, the earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, it was a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of what? That's where he found God. It was in the whisper. It was in the whisper. God wasn't trying to impress Elijah. He was trying to be close to him. Because whispers only work when someone is near to you. We don't whisper to somebody that's on the other side of the room. You don't whisper from a distance. You lean in. That's what whispers do. When we whisper, people lean in. And God is whispering so Elijah will lean in and hear what he has to say. And the whisper told Elijah, he says, I'm here. I haven't left you. I'm not in that noise. I'm in the nearness of what's going on. And maybe that's the shift that we need, is that we just need to know that God's presence is here. We talked about it last week. The blessing that God gives us is His presence. Because we might keep asking God to shout down our storm, but what if He's just whispering to us instead? There was a great song written years ago by a guy named Scott Crepane, and he says this, that sometimes He calms the storm, but other times He just calms the child. And what if, instead of God trying to calm the storm, He's just trying to calm you on the inside? That He's trying to provide rest for your soul. And what if it's not in the dramatic solution, but it's in the quiet reminder that God is trying to restore you? That you're not alone, that you're still loved. We need that, even as adults, don't we? We need to know, we need affirmations sometimes that we're loved and cared for. What noise in your life is drowning out the whisper of God when He's trying to speak? Because sometimes the most spiritual thing we do is to stop straining for a sign and just start listening for His voice. And that voice is gentle and it doesn't rush you, it doesn't shame you. It just says, hey, I'm here and I'm not done with you. And I don't know about you, I need that. Do you need that? God isn't done. He's just shifting the mission for you. So Elijah hears a whisper, and even after that holy moment, he's still honest. Because you would think he hears God's whisper and he's all good, right? Because we feel like when I pray, I should all be good. But look what happens. In 1 Kings 19, he repeats the exact same words. I have been very zealous for you. Here's all the things that I have done. And I'm the only one left, God, and they're trying to kill me. He says it again, word for word. Have your prayers ever felt like that? Like I just said this prayer last night. I just said it this morning. I'm going to say it at lunchtime, and I'm going to tell you again tonight, God. I have done all these things. I am the only one left. We're just repeating, because sometimes even after an encounter with God, our emotions don't shift right away. And we got to get our emotions to shift. Sometimes the soul needs time to catch up with what the Spirit is doing. But there's this beautiful thing that God doesn't rebuke him for repeating himself. He doesn't say, you're still stuck there? Are you kidding me? After everything I just told you, after what you just heard? Instead, he responds with purpose. Look what he says in 1 Kings 19:15. Go return on your way. Go return on your way. And I want you to anoint Hazael. And I want you to anoint Jehu. These are going to be kings in Israel. And call Elisha to follow you. See, God says, you're not done, Elijah. I still have work for you, sir. But it's going to look different in this next season. In this next season, you're not going to be calling down fire. Your fire days of calling down fire, those days are over. But that doesn't mean the mission's over. It just might mean it's time for a shift to be made with Elijah. And so Elijah's next season is not about calling down fire. It's about raising up the next generation. See, his next assignment is to train Elisha. Preparing the way. Multiplying what God had started. And just in case Elijah still felt completely alone, because remember, he said, God, I've done all these things, and I'm the only one left. God drops this truth bomb on him in verse 18. Look what he says. He says, yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel and all the knees that have not bowed down to Baal. In other words, hey, dude, I know you think it's about you, but you're not the only one. I'm going to leave behind 7,000 of people just like you who love me, who serve me. I'm going to leave those behind because there are still people who still follow God. When you think all hope is gone, you think all the weight of the world is on your shoulders, Elijah, it's not. Because I still got 7,000 people in this land that have not sold out. So God's been at work the whole time. He's been behind the scenes. He's been doing a work. And here's the truth for us, that sometimes the breakdown is what clears the way for new direction for us, that we have to have some things broken down. Just because our role changes doesn't mean our value changes. And God's not subtracting, God's in the multiplication business, amen? He multiplies. And I think this is powerful for us. Like, there's some of us that we're living in moments right now where you are, that you're in those calling fire down from heaven days. You got the energy. You don't wake up every morning and already regret your back hurting, right? You've got the energy. And then there's some of us that are older that our mission has shifted. We still make disciples, but as we get older, it shifts of how we do that, doesn't it? We've got to be a culture, especially if you're older, you've got to be a culture where you're pouring back into the next generation and not be intimidated. And if you're younger, you've got to keep your ears open and listen to the next generation. Now, he's not here, and I'm going to share it. And Miss Janet, if you go tell Mickey that I said anything about him, he's going to take me out. If I'm not here next week, you know why. Miss Janet told him. But Mr. Mickey has been one of my best friends, okay, in his 80s. I think he makes Johnny Cash look like a saint. But for years, I think we're going on about 10 years of friendship. We talk every single week on the phone. And sometimes there's no intentions of the call. It's just checking in, and then 30 minutes later, hour later, one time it was an hour and a half later, that it's just about, it's kind of like a campfire moment on the phone where he just pours in and teaches and helps me, encourages me. You ready? Corrects me. And here's what I know about Mickey, that he loves me. Because he wants to take everything that he has learned and he wants to pour it back into me. And I'm very thankful for that. You need a Mickey in your life that's willing to speak to you. And we don't have a lot in common. Like, I can't text Mickey. We don't text. He doesn't text. He tries, and it's like one word. We physically talk. But I always walk away from those conversations encouraged. I feel closer to the Lord, and I feel like I got a friend in my corner. Do you have that person? But here's the thing. I don't just let it stop with what Mickey has taught me. Guess what? I've got to let that go through me to the next person. So you need somebody in your life that you can speak to that's up, and somebody that you can pour down to that is down. You see what I'm saying? Let me give you the terminology. That's discipleship. The older generation to the younger generation. You need somebody to get it out of you and somebody to flow it back into. And you need those people. And I'm thankful for those conversations because it tells me that God's not done with me. God's not done with you. Elijah reminds us that you might be worn out, you might not be washed up. The mission may look different. Maybe in this season it's slower, maybe it's quieter, maybe it's less flashy, but it's still holy. And maybe your fire days have shifted and now you're in your whisper days. And that's okay because God doesn't just use the bold, God uses the broken as well. And God can still build things with the broken. You know, broken crayons still work. They still work. So maybe that's where you are today. You're not standing on top of Mount Carmel. You're curled up under your own broom tree. You're not calling down fire. You're just trying to breathe. You're not feeling bold anymore. You just feel broken. Maybe you just feel like you're just going through the motions, and you've been going through the motions for a long time. Elijah's story tells us that God isn't waiting to scold us. He's leaning to whisper, to speak. And He's not measuring our worth based off our performance and about how much you do. He's meeting you where you are in your pain because He's not done with you. Jesus Himself said this, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Not pressure and not more task, rest. And Paul would later write in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, "It's in my weakness, for when I'm weak, that's when I am made strong." Because God meets His people not with smoke and spectacles, but with a gentle whisper. And what I want to do, I'm going to ask our worship team to come, but what we're going to do, we're going to close a little different. Because I want you to hear the whisper. I want you to sit and ask God to speak to you. Ask God what the whisper into you. Because some of you are fighting lies. Some of you are fighting fears. There's weight that you're carrying that you need to lay down. And we're going to sing in just a second. I've shared this story before, and I'm going to share it again to kind of bridge this gap. But there was a guy named Horatio Spafford who wrote a very powerful hymn. He lived in the 1800s in Chicago. And in 1871, we've all sat through our history classes and we've heard about the Great Chicago Fire that destroyed a huge portion of the city of Chicago. And what happened was when this fire hit, it destroyed most of Horatio's real estate investments. So financially, Horatio took this massive hit. And around the same time, his 4-year-old son dies of an illness. Now, that's a lot, isn't it? Like losing everything financially is one thing. Losing a child, it's like, that's it. He was trying to regroup, so he planned a trip to Europe to get away. In 1873, his wife and his 4 daughters, they were going to join friends. One of those friends was the great evangelist D.L. Moody. But the business delayed him, so he sent his wife and his daughters ahead on the trip and said, "I'll meet you there. I'll join you soon, but go ahead." And then the unthinkable happens after losing everything financially, after losing his son. The ship that his wife and his daughters were on collided with another vessel, and it sank in the Atlantic Ocean. And all 4 of his daughters drowned. And his wife Anna survived, and she sent him this heartbreaking telegram. It said this: saved alone, just me. Immediately, Spafford gets on the boat, and he's going to reunite with his wife, who was in mourning. And as the ship passes over those same waters where his daughter had died, the captain points out the exact location of the wreck. And he said it was there, right over those waters that took his children, that Horatio penned these words. He says, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. See, this is raw, honest, anchored faith in God, who doesn't always stop the storm, but he's present in the middle of it. And for Horatio, his words weren't, and I think this is what's interesting, is Horatio's words weren't written once he got to the other side of the pain. He writes these words when he's in the middle of the pain. See, it doesn't deny grief. What it does is it declares hope in the middle of the grief. And for some of us, our souls are wrecked, and we need a time of peace. You agree with that? Like, what the best thing for our country right now is to pause, take a breath, and get some soul care. But that starts with us as the church. And so I want us to sing these lyrics. I want us to rattle the walls and sing this in truth, that we're going to declare. And I know you're like, my soul doesn't feel that way. You know, sometimes you got to tell your soul what to do. David did it. He said, bless the Lord, oh my. You better be blessing, soul, because I'm going to out-bless if you don't. I'm going to sing. I'm going to tell God how good he is. Because I think sometimes that's the breakthrough to the peace, isn't it? Why don't we stand together? And I'm going to ask our team if you would lead. And let's just sing this as a declaration to God. If you're comfortable, I want you to just lift your hands out as a way of surrender to him, and just belt these words out to him.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul.
So, Father, in this place, I just pray that we would hear your whisper today. God, that our souls would be at peace, that we would find rest in you. We live in such a ruthless society that we have to go, and do all these things. But I pray right now that we won't let anything rob this moment of us pushing the brake and leaning in to hear you whisper to us. Jesus, I thank you for what you're going to do in this place and in these next few moments as we declare these words that were written out of moments of pain and out of moments of feeling like he was in a cave. But you called Horatio out. And this is the declaration. May this be our declaration today of all things in our lives. And Jesus, we pray these things in your name.